The leadership in Ouagadougou, led by Ibrahim Traoré, called an urgent meeting. Dr. Alonsurago, he began. President Trump has just given us a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. He completely underestimates our preparation. What kind of preparation, President? Dr. Ouedraogo asked, puzzled. We've been investigating links between the Trump Organization and corrupt African regimes for 3 years, Ibrahim said with a cold smile. We've never used any of the information. But now, Trump has forced our hand. It was a sunny May morning in 2025 at Mar-a-Lago when Donald Trump made a decision that would change his presidency forever. Confident in his ability to intimidate foreign leaders, he personally called Ibrahim Traoré, offering a televised debate. Ibrahim, my young friend, Trump said, his voice dripping with characteristic arrogance. How about we show the world how a seasoned president handles complex international issues? Ibrahim paused, taken aback by the direct proposal. At 35, he had learned to be wary of American politicians, especially Donald Trump. Mr. President, what topics would you like to discuss? Africa, trade, development, things you Africans. You need to learn from us, Trump replied dismissively. It will be educational for your people to see how America really works. Ibrahim smiled subtly on the other end of the line. Interesting proposal, Mr. Trump, I accept. But I suggest an open format, no script, no narrow topics. Let the conversation flow naturally. Trump laughed out loud. Perfect. The more spontaneous, the better. You'll see how a real president conducts business. After hanging up, Trump turned to his aides. I'm going to humiliate this African kid on world television. It'll be a lesson in real leadership. We'll give him just that, his chief advisor said. The stage was set for a confrontation neither side could fully anticipate. In the days that followed, Ibrahim Traoré immersed himself in preparations that would shape history. In a secure room in the presidential palace, his intelligence team presented a devastating dossier on the Trump Organization's covert operations in Africa. President, said Major Umaru Ouedraogo, we have documents proving the Trump Organization laundered money for African dictators between 2018 and 2022, totaling $340 million in suspicious transactions. Ibrahim studied the evidence meticulously, and the connections to illegal mining. Confirmed, sir, the major replied. Trump companies mined diamonds and coltan illegally in Congo, Chad and Mali, paying bribes to corrupt officials and financing militias. Dr. Wood produced even more sensitive documents. President, we have learned that Trump personally approved an operation in 2021 to destabilize the government in order to benefit from his company's mining concessions. How many deaths did this operation cause? Ibrahim asked, his voice thick with controlled indignation. An estimated 2,300 civilians have died in conflicts financed by the Trump Organization. Dr. Ouedraogo replied grimly. Ibrahim took a deep breath. And we have irrefutable proof: audio recordings, bank transfers, emails, documents signed by Trump himself, all verified by 3 independent intelligence agencies. Major Ouedraogo confirmed. Meanwhile, in Washington, Trump was preparing in a completely different way. This is going to be a piece of cake, he told his aides. Young African versus experienced American president. Please, I'll show him how real business works. One of his aides cautiously tried to warn him. Mr. President, Ibrahim Traoré has a reputation for being very prepared. He's the president of a country that no one can find on a map, Trump interrupted, laughing. How prepared can he be? If Trump had known what Ibrahim had uncovered about his covert operations in Africa, he never would have made that call. The evening of May 25, 2025 arrived with unprecedented global anticipation. CNN had organized the debate, which would be broadcast simultaneously to 89 countries. Anderson Cooper would serve as moderator, ensuring a fair and balanced exchange. In CNN's sleek Atlanta studio, Trump adjusted his signature red tie, radiating confidence. Across the world, Ibrahim sat serenely in his presidential office, secret documents neatly arranged in a folder at his side. Good evening, world, Anderson Cooper began. Tonight, we bring you a historic debate between President Donald Trump and President Ibrahim Traoré on global leadership and African development. The screen split. Trump in CNN's plush studio, Ibrahim in a modest but dignified presidential setting. President Trump. Anderson began. You initiated this debate. What is your vision for African development? Trump leaned forward aggressively. Anderson, Africa needs to understand that real development comes from partnerships with countries that know how to do business. America has built the world's greatest economy. Africans should learn from us. President Traoré. Anderson continued. Your response? Ibrahim smiled politely. President Trump, I agree that Africa should learn from international experiences, including what not to do, particularly when it comes to ethical business practices. Trump laughed dismissively. Ibrahim, you're young. You don't understand how the real world works. Business is about winning. Interesting perspective, Ibrahim replied calmly, especially coming from someone who considers winning to include illegal operations in Africa. Trump stopped, laughing abruptly. What are you talking about? I'm talking about the Trump Organization, Ibrahim said, his tone steady, and its activities in Africa that you clearly thought would remain secret. He touched the folder beside him. Anderson Cooper noticed the sudden tension in the air. President Traoré, do you have specific allegations? I have specific evidence, Ibrahim corrected, opening the folder. Mr. Trump, would you like to explain the 2021 African Diamond operation? Trump's face visibly paled at the name. African Diamond was the code name for a top-secret operation he believed no one outside his closest circle knew about. I don't know what you're talking about, Trump stammered, his confidence slipping for the first time. Ibrahim held up a document to the camera. This is the memorandum, he said, signed by you on March 15, 2021, authorizing the payment of $23 million to militias in Mali for secure mining operations. That is a fake document, Trump shouted, rising from his chair. Verified by 3 independent intelligence agencies, Ibrahim replied coolly, including the FBI, which, curiously, never investigated your African activities. Anderson Cooper looked stunned. President Traoré, are you accusing President Trump of funding militias? I am presenting documented evidence, Ibrahim said firmly. Operation African Diamond has resulted in 2,300 civilian deaths in Mali between 2021 and 2022, all to benefit the Trump organization's illegal mining concessions. The screen flashed a series of devastating images: burned villages, displaced families, orphaned children. Every single one of these deaths, Ibrahim continued, has a traceable link. Name them, Mr. Trump, Ibrahim said steadily. Every single family destroyed has paid the price for your
business deals. Trump was now visibly panicked. This is an orchestrated smear campaign. By whom? Ibrahim asked politely. By the families you've orphaned? By the governments your operations have destabilized? You have no right to impeach me, Trump shouted. I have the right to defend my continent against predators who masquerade as businessmen. Ibrahim replied, his voice growing firmer. I have the right to expose the truth about a man who calls himself a leader while financing terrorism. Mr. Trump, Ibrahim continued inexorably. Operation African Diamond was just one of a dozen similar operations we've documented. Do you want me to continue? Trump's silence spoke louder than any answer. He had been completely blindsided by a young man he had once considered easy prey. Ibrahim Traoré decided it was time to lay out the full extent of his evidence. Since Mr. Trump denies African Diamond, he said, flipping through pages in his briefcase, let's discuss Operation Congo Red. No, Trump shouted desperately. I refuse to continue this interrogation, Mr. Trump, Anderson Cooper interjected. You agreed to an open format. President Traoré is presenting serious allegations that deserve a response. Ibrahim produced a new document. Congo Red, he read aloud. $67 million laundered through Trump Organization shell companies to fund the illegal extraction of coltan, a mineral essential for smartphones and laptops. The operation displaced 45,000 Congolese families, destroyed 12 villages, and contaminated rivers with mercury. Ibrahim continued relentlessly. Also that the Trump Organization could control 40% of the region's illegal coltan production. Trump tried a last-ditch defense. I never authorized. Your signature is on every document, Ibrahim interrupted, holding up the contracts. Your voice is on the tapes approving transactions. Your bank accounts received profits. On the screen, bank statements began flashing. Transfers of tens of millions from Bank of America, Deutsche Bank, and Credit Suisse. They all processed payments, Ibrahim stated, that you knew were derived from illegal activities in Africa. Anderson Cooper looked stunned. President Trump, how do you explain this evidence? Trump was now visibly shaking. This is an international conspiracy against me. Conspiracy, Ibrahim laughed, shaking his head. Mr. Trump, you documented your own crimes. You recorded conversations. You signed contracts. You transferred money. We don't need to conspire when you've left a complete trail. But the most devastating evidence, Ibrahim continued, is the tape of you personally ordering the murder of a community leader in Chad. A man who opposed your mining operations. That's a lie, Trump shouted, but his voice was cracking. A 47-minute recording, Ibrahim said calmly, verified by independent voice analysis experts. Do you want me to play it back live? Trump said nothing. His complete silence confirmed what the world had just begun to understand. Ibrahim had evidence that could destroy him completely. Trump now sat in a state of total panic, realizing he had walked into a carefully constructed trap, one of catastrophic proportions. His hands shook as he tried to form a coherent response. You Africans are trying to blackmail me," he stammered, sweat dripping down his face. "Mr. Trump," Ibrahim said with devastating calm, "blackmail would mean I asked for something in exchange for silence. I'm not asking for anything. I am exposing crimes. Why do you think I invited this debate?" Ibrahim continued, his voice calm and precise. "At first, I thought it was the usual American arrogance, a desire to humiliate an African leader. Then I realized it was the perfect opportunity for justice." Anderson Cooper did his best to maintain professional composure. "President Trump, these are extremely serious allegations. Do you want to respond specifically?" "I don't have to answer anything," Trump exploded. "I am the President of the United States, and I," Ibrahim replied firmly, "I am the President of the country your operations have tried to destroy. That gives me the moral right to expose your crimes against my people." Ibrahim held up a photo that made Trump pale instantly. Trump shaking hands with a notorious African warlord. "This photo is from a secret meeting in 2020, where you promised Khan Matsuda $50 million in exchange for protection of your operations in Chad." Trump's voice dropped to a whisper, visibly shaken. "How did you get this photo?" "Cohn has worked for us for 3 years, Ibrahim revealed, his smile cold and deliberate. "Every meeting, every transaction, every crime you committed in Africa was documented by our intelligence services. You thought Africa was your playground for criminal schemes," he added. "You just didn't realize we were watching your every move." Trump tried to get up, tried to escape, but remembered he was being broadcast live to the entire world. "You can't leave now, Mr. Trump," Ibrahim said gently. "The whole world is watching." What kind of leader runs away when confronted with the truth? The trap had been flawless. Trump was cornered, exposed, with no way out. Ibrahim Traoré decided it was time to deliver the final, devastating revelation. "But there is something else, Mr. Trump," he said. "Something that explains why you've never been investigated for these crimes in the United States." Trump's expression turned to fear. He sensed the blow that was coming. "We have discovered," Ibrahim said, opening the final folder, "that you shared profits from your African operations with American politicians to secure legal protection." The room went completely silent. The list includes 2 senators, a federal judge, and 3 FBI officials. Anderson Cooper stared in disbelief. "President Traoré, are you alleging systematic corruption of the American government?" "I am proving systematic corruption," Ibrahim replied, holding up the documents. "These are bank transfers. The Trump Organization didn't just commit crimes in Africa. It corrupted the American justice system to escape accountability." He pointed to the names. Senator Richard Burton received $12 million through a fake foundation. Judge William Hayes took $8 million in fraudulent investments. FBI Deputy Director Michael Ross was paid $5 million for fabricated consulting services. Trump was now openly weeping, the full weight of his downfall pressing down on him. "Please," he muttered, "please, stop." But Ibrahim's voice was filled with righteous fire. "You want me to stop?" he asked, trembling with controlled emotion. "Stop exposing the truth about a man who financed genocide just to profit from minerals. 2,300 families killed in Mali. Can't stop their suffering. 45,000 displaced in Congo. Can't stop their pain. So why should I stop seeking justice?" Then Ibrahim turned directly to the camera. "The world needs to understand. Some men who call themselves leaders are criminals in disguise. Africa is not a playground for Western predators, and young African leaders are not afraid to speak the truth, no matter how powerful the criminal may be." Trump had stopped resisting. He had stopped denying. He had been defeated by truth. Fighting was useless. He was utterly defeated, exposed for the monster he truly was. "Mr. Trump," Ibrahim said at last, his voice steady and resolute, "thank you for this debate. You have given me the perfect platform to educate the world about your crimes." The most powerful man on earth had just been torn apart by a 35-year-old he had fatally underestimated. In the hours that followed the devastating debate, the entire world reeled in shock. Social media erupted. Clips of Ibrahim's revelations were shared billions of times. #TrumpCrimes and #IbrahimJustice. trended globally within minutes. I've never witnessed such a total political meltdown, said a BBC analyst, Ibrahim. Business deals. Trump was now visibly panicked. This is an orchestrated smear campaign. By whom? Ibrahim asked politely. By the families you've orphaned? By the governments your operations have destabilized? You have no right to impeach me, Trump shouted. I have the right to defend my continent against predators who masquerade as businessmen. Ibrahim replied, his voice growing firmer. I have the right to expose the truth about a man who calls himself a leader while financing terrorism. Mr. Trump, Ibrahim continued inexorably. Operation African Diamond was just one of a dozen similar operations we've documented. Do you want me to continue? Trump's silence spoke louder than any answer. He had been completely blindsided by a young man he had once considered easy prey. Ibrahim Traoré decided it was time to lay out the full extent of his evidence. Since Mr. Trump denies African Diamond, he said, flipping through pages in his briefcase, let's discuss Operation Congo Red. No, Trump shouted desperately. I refuse to continue this interrogation, Mr. Trump, Anderson Cooper interjected. You agreed to an open format. President Traoré is presenting serious allegations that deserve a response. Ibrahim produced a new document. Congo Red, he read aloud. $67 million laundered through Trump Organization shell companies to fund the illegal extraction of coltan, a mineral essential for smartphones and laptops. The operation displaced 45,000 Congolese families, destroyed 12 villages, and contaminated rivers with mercury. Ibrahim continued relentlessly. Also that the Trump Organization could control 40% of the region's illegal coltan production. Trump tried a last-ditch defense. I never authorized. Your signature is on every document, Ibrahim interrupted, holding up the contracts. Your voice is on the tapes approving transactions. Your bank accounts received profits. On the screen, bank statements began flashing. Transfers of tens of millions from Bank of America, Deutsche Bank, and Credit Suisse. They all processed payments, Ibrahim stated, that you knew were derived from illegal activities in Africa. Anderson Cooper looked stunned. President Trump, how do you explain this evidence? Trump was now visibly shaking. This is an international conspiracy against me. Conspiracy, Ibrahim laughed, shaking his head. Mr. Trump, you documented your own crimes. You recorded conversations. You signed contracts. You transferred money. We don't need to conspire when you've left a complete trail. But the most devastating evidence, Ibrahim continued, is the tape of you personally ordering the murder of a community leader in Chad. A man who opposed your mining operations. That's a lie, Trump shouted, but his voice was cracking. A 47-minute recording, Ibrahim said calmly, verified by independent voice analysis experts. Do you want me to play it back live? Traoré has just altered world history live on television. In the White House, panic consumed the halls. The vice president attempted to assume control while Trump had locked himself inside the Oval Office, refusing to speak to anyone. We need an immediate statement, said the chief of staff. Frantic, the president is in a state of complete shock. Congress called an emergency session that same evening. Evidence presented by President Traoré demands immediate investigation and impeachment, declared the Speaker of the House. If proven true, President Trump committed crimes against humanity. The FBI launched a criminal investigation based solely on Ibrahim's evidence. The documents appear authentic, admitted the FBI director off the record. If verified, they will lead to the arrest of multiple high-ranking federal officials. African nations immediately demanded international tribunals. The African Union voted unanimously to prosecute Trump for war crimes. Africa United demands justice, declared the O chairman. Global financial markets plunged into chaos. American political instability is unprecedented, reported the Wall Street Journal. Investors are fleeing U.S. assets in droves. NATO convened an emergency summit to question the future of U.S. leadership. How can we trust an ally whose leader is a war criminal? Asked the French president. In a supreme twist of irony, countries Trump had long insulted now offered Ibrahim their protection. President Traoré has shown exceptional courage in exposing the truth. said Russian President Vladimir Putin. Russia guarantees his safety. China followed suit. Courageous leaders deserve protection from retaliation by criminals, read a government statement. Ibrahim had transformed overnight from a relatively unknown African president to a global symbol of justice, while Trump had become an international pariah. A week after Ibrahim's devastating expose, Trump's situation had collapsed beyond repair. Impeachment passed in record time, with overwhelming bipartisan support. The evidence is irrefutable, said the Republican Senate leader. We cannot and will not defend crimes against humanity. The FBI arrested a dozen corrupt officials identified in Ibrahim's dossier, including a sitting senator and a federal judge. Operation Cleanup, announced the Attorney General, is proceeding based entirely on the evidence provided by President Traoré. The Trump organization imploded. Banks canceled all loans. Business partners severed ties. Properties were seized as reparations. This is the largest political and financial collapse in U.S. history, reported Forbes. African nations began filing multi-trillion-dollar lawsuits for damages caused by Trump's covert operations. Trump owes reparations to every family his empire has destroyed, said an international human rights lawyer representing victims. Even more devastating, Trump's own family began turning against him. We cannot be associated with a war criminal, said Eric Trump in a public statement. We are shocked and disgusted. Melania Trump filed for divorce immediately. I had no knowledge of the atrocities, her legal team stated, and I will not stand by a man who has betrayed both his country and humanity. Crimes, she said in an exclusive interview. Ibrahim Traoré opened my eyes to the monster I married. Trump had tried to flee the country, but his passport was confiscated. Extreme flight risk, ruled a federal judge. There's clear evidence of multiple crimes in international jurisdictions. Meanwhile, Ibrahim was being honored across the globe. President Traoré saved Africa from a predator disguised as a leader, said Archbishop Desmond Tutu. Exceptional moral heroism. The Nobel Peace Prize Committee announced a special award for courage in exposing crimes against humanity and defending justice for the African people. 1 month after the historic debate, Trump was indicted on 347 federal charges and faced extradition to The Hague for war crimes. Ibrahim had turned the hunter into the hunted with surgical precision. Sometimes, Ibrahim reflected in an interview, predators forget that prey can fight back. A year after Ibrahim Traoré exposed Trump's appalling crimes on live global television, the geopolitical transformation was complete. Trump was now serving a life sentence in a federal penitentiary. Convicted of crimes against humanity and systematic corruption, Ibrahim had become the most respected figure in international politics, a global symbol of justice and moral courage. He now stood in Geneva, addressing the United Nations General Assembly on a new era of global accountability. A year ago, he told delegates from 193 countries, the world discovered that the leader of the most powerful nation was a war criminal. Today, we have proven that justice has no borders, and that even the most powerful are not above the law. Applause erupted, echoing for over 10 minutes. African delegates wept openly, witnessing justice at last for decades of suffering and stolen dignity. The Trump case had become a legal and moral precedent. International criminals would now be prosecuted regardless of power, status, or position. The era of impunity is over, Ibrahim continued. The International Criminal Tribunal in The Hague has expanded its jurisdiction. Following the Traoré precedent, a young African leader showed the world that justice is possible when leadership is guided by moral courage, said the chief prosecutor of the ICC. The United States had since elected a new president, one who vowed to restore global trust through transparency and accountability. Ibrahim Traoré saved American democracy from the grip of criminality, said the new president in their inaugural address. We are eternally grateful. Africa, too, was thriving under a new international paradigm of respect and equality. Trump's crimes exposed a global truth, said the president. Africa is not a playground for Western exploitation. We are equal partners deserving respect. Ibrahim founded the Traoré Institute for International Justice, a global Center to train young leaders in anti-corruption, human rights law, and ethical governance. Never again will the powerful escape justice for crimes against innocent people, he declared at the Institute's opening ceremony. In a final reflection, Ibrahim said, Trump thought Africa was weak. He thought young leaders were naive. What he discovered was this: justice has no age limit, and truth is the most powerful weapon of all. Sometimes, the greatest criminals make the fatal mistake of underestimating their victims. Trump's arrogance gave me a platform to expose decades of crimes. Justice delayed is not justice denied when someone finds the courage to act. The young African leader Trump once tried to intimidate, had, against all odds, rewritten the rules of international justice forever. Justice forever.